Good evening and welcome to our September Committee of the Whole meeting. This is where we review agenda items for next month's, regular board business meeting. We will get started with roll call. Director Decker.
I'm here.
Director Smith.
Here.
Director Barrows.
Here.
Director Zavala.
Here.
And I'm also here. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Snell.
Thank you, Director Sproul. We have our usual preview of the agenda, so I'm going to turn it over to Brett to walk you through the agenda items, and we also have Taylor on the call for any of the policy updates. So, Brett, go ahead.
All right, I'll go ahead and share screen so we can look at the items that we're discussing. All right, hopefully everybody's able to see the shared screen. All right, then we'll go ahead and jump right in with the first of the contract items. The, I guess, what might become routine, unfortunately, is the recommendation to approve resolution number 926, which is an advance of apportionment. By way of review, there historically has always been a dramatic mismatch between when our revenue, specifically our state basic ed revenues, are presented to us versus when we actually spend the money. When we had more robust fund balances, it wasn't a problem. We could use our savings in essence to even out those monthly shortages that are kind of inherent in the revenue delivery system. Now that our fund balances are trimmed down significantly as we've strategically drawn them down, we're required to seek other cash flow instruments. So the board approved some short-term gap funding through the county treasurer in August. This is just the again, I mentioned the apportionment is paid very late in the school year, but you can apply through a resolution for an advance on what you've earned and will ultimately be paid in more July and August. So again, this resolution will allow us to get a little bit more of our state money earlier than the normal payment schedule. So we did one last year, so this is just the update of what we've done in the past. Any questions on that? All right, then we'll move forward with the more traditional recommendation, and that would be to approve client service agreement between Vancouver Public Schools and Avid Center. Avid is a program that's offered at looks like 10 of our secondary schools, and it provides a comprehensive supports for students and staff. The annual cost is estimated to be $50,778 to provide those Avid supports at those 10 secondary schools. Any questions on that? Right, then I'll move us forward to a recommendation to approve a client service agreement for Barrett Barrett Business Solutions Incorporated. And this is a program that allows our interns through our CTE program to, it processes these small stipends that those students earn through that process outside of our payroll for some logistical reasons, and then also provides insurance since our staff are not directly supervising the students in those roles. They certainly oversee the internship, but they're not there on a daily basis. So our insurance would not apply to that. And so this is a continuing practice that we have for those CTE-based internships. The estimated cost is $120,000 plus Washington State sales tax for the year. Any questions on the Barrett Business Solutions contract? All right, then we'll move forward to another recommendation to renew the provider agreement with Team Select Home Care for our VPS students. This is a contractor that provides registered nurses and licensed, LPNs, I'm blanking on what that acronym stands for, but healthcare supports for our most medically fragile students. The estimated cost is 125,000. I think it's a not to exceed 125,000 for those services as they're necessary. And again, this would be in addition to our nursing supports that we have for our employees. These would either be specialty or just in cases where we're short on nurses in certain areas, we can tap into this contractor base. I'll share a second one before I pause, because there's another one that's very similar, and that is a renewal of a provider agreement with Pediatric Services of America, which does business as Avena Healthcare. And again, very similar layer of support for those medical specialty positions that are either not practical for us to fill, or we're unable to fill with employees in support of those medically fragile students. Any question on either of those two support contracts? All right, I'll move us forward to our last two items are both completed capital projects. And as you're familiar, we haven't had one in a while, but as you have been familiar over the years, when the project is completed to all of our specifications, the architects have signed off on them. It requires board formal action to accept the project as complete, and that allows some of the final closeout of the project, including the release of retainage, to begin. So the first one was a bid number 2023-022 for moisture intrusion mitigation at Kiggins Bowl. The contractor on that one was J.R. Swigart Company. The final cost was $139,706.35 plus Washington State sales tax. That was all paid again out of our bond or capital projects fund. And then I'll quickly preview the second before pausing for questions. Through the bond capital projects fund, we also provided some classroom additions at Fruit Valley Elementary under bid number 2018-051. The final cost of that was $2,812,088.91, and that was paid to Fortney Contractors. So any questions on those two completed capital projects? All right, thank you for that. And so I'll turn it back to you, Director Spurl, for I guess we'll pass it to Taylor for the policy discussion.
Yes, just go straight to Taylor.
All right, Taylor, you're on.
All right, thanks, Brett. Okay, so there are 5 policies that we'll be bringing for first read at next month's meeting. The first 4 that you see are all policies that come out of the new Title IX regulations that are effective now, and WASDA has published their model policies, and so all 4 of these are based on those model policies to align our policies with the Title IX regulations and state law. So I'll kind of go through. It's 4 policies, but it's sort of 2 pairs of policies. So the first one, policy 3205, and this is kind of paired with policy 5011. These are our policies prohibiting sex discrimination and sex-based harassment. So the 3000 series are policies that relate to students, so prohibiting sex-based harassment of students, and the 5000 series, sort of a mirror policy, but pertaining to our staff. So again, these policies kind of align with Title IX. Some of the specific changes to the policies include an updated definition of sex discrimination and sex-based harassment, and updated requirements for staff training and for the prompt response of the district when we know or should know of potential sex discrimination or sex-based harassment. Our requirements regarding remedying any sex discrimination. And so those policies for both students and staff are pretty identical to one another. And those are both, so 3205 and 5011 are both revised policies. We've had those policies, but they're revised. And because of the sort of pretty complete revision to those policies, we've just sort of we haven't gone through and done sort of a line by line editing. We just put sort of the new version of the policy on top and then crossed out the old language. Then there are the sort of second pair of policies, 3206 and 5012. These are new policies relating to the 3206 is pregnant and parenting students, and the 5012 being pregnant or parenting staff members. So again, these are sort of Title IX based policies laying out our non-discrimination requirements with respect to students or staff who are pregnant, have a pregnancy related condition, or are parenting. Specifically with respect to students, it lays out our obligation not to treat pregnant or parenting students differently, except to allow voluntary participation in any sort of supportive programs that we have for pregnant and parenting students, and any such programs have to be comparable to the sort of standard program that we offer. And again, there is a grievance process and obligations to respond promptly to allegations of discrimination of pregnant and parenting students. 5012, a very similar policy for our employees, and also it applies to applicants. And I'll say the difference between this policy and the student policy is that there is also sort of, in addition to the non-discrimination regarding pregnancy and related conditions, there are some terms of non-discrimination on parental status, family status, and marital status that apply for employees. So those are our 4 new Title IX policies. They will be followed after ultimately adoption with updated regulations that will go into some depth. But so I'll pause on those 4 and see if there's any questions or discussion the board wants to have. Okay, and then the final policy is an amendment or revision to policy 5400. Personnel leaves. This is just an update to clarify that personnel leaves, to align the language with Washington's sick leave law, and specifically with WAC 296-128-630, which provides that we treat sort of sick leave units differently than other personnel leave units. So this just clarifies that this policy does not apply to sick leave.
And Taylor, would you explain what the difference in the units is?
Sure. If you want, whoever is controlling the document, if you could scroll up to the first page, you'll see the revision. There you go. In leave units, so section 3. Right there. Section 3A, we say, except for sick leave units, leave for certificated employees will be granted in units of half or full days only. So for leave units, Washington law provides that we need to grant leave based on the increments that we use for other payroll purposes. So that would, and that those leave units be not in excess of 1 hour. So to say that in a less convoluted way, that sick leave can be used in 1 hour increments or less if that's what we are using for payroll purposes. Instead of, so that's in contrast to the half or full day units for other types of leave.
And one of the things I talked to Taylor about was how that would affect sub time. Like if a sub has to come in, but the sub is only coming in for 2 hours rather than a half a day, how that would be entered into their timesheet. Because currently we just do half day and full day for substitutes.
Yes, I think
That's
that.
an HR question.
Yeah, right. Now I'd say that would be definitely some implications of the policy that we'll have to resolve if and when that comes up.
Yeah, I guess I can maybe jump in and say that, yeah, we don't believe from a competitiveness perspective, we can start paying our subs hourly. We'll have to stay with the half day or full day increments. Where there will be alignment on this is if somebody does take an hour, let's say in the first period of the day, oftentimes we can buy prep from another teacher that's already in the building, that many of them really welcome the opportunity to earn a little bit of extra compensation. And so in that case, we would have to just simply pay for 1 period or 1 hour of the covering teacher that's giving up their prep. But yeah, to your question, when we're bringing in a sub from the outside, we don't think that too many folks would take the job if it was just an hour in the middle of the day. So we're kind of resigned to the current structures.
Right, and that paying a teacher for their prep works at the secondary level, but not at the elementary level.
Exactly.
So I just wanted to throw that out there because it was a question that Taylor and I had talked about.
Absolutely. Okay, that's all of the policies that we'll be bringing forward to the next meeting.
All right, well, if it's okay, Director Sproul, we'll go ahead and transition to the teaching and learning. And I think there's 4 items on the instructional material report this month. So I'll open it up if there's any questions or concerns on any of those 4. All right, then I believe that concludes our agenda. So I'll turn it back to Madam President to, it looks like we'll be recessing to
Yeah.
executive session.
So that will conclude our committee of the whole. If anyone, of course, has any follow-up questions to anything tonight, email as necessary. We are recessing to executive session for the purpose of discussing the sale of real estate with no action to follow. We estimate this will be about 30 minutes, and I will come back to adjourn the meeting. So thank you, everyone, and we will see you in a week. Good evening. I am reporting back in our public meeting that our executive session has concluded at 6:10 p.m. And as a reminder, there was no action to follow, so our meeting tonight is adjourned.